Good evening and welcome to Woodstock City Council. It is Thursday, May the 16th, 2019. We have quite a full agenda with numerous delegations, so we'll get right to work tonight. Any disclosure of conflict of interest? Seeing none. Disclosure of new business. Matters arising from the minutes. The minutes of our meeting from May 2nd, 2019. Councillor Fraser.
That the minutes of the regular meeting of Woodstock City Council held on May 2nd, 2019 be adopted.
Thank you, and seconded by Councillor Schattenberg. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, you've heard the motion. All those in favor? Carries. Unanimous. Next item on the agenda is additions to the agenda. Councillor Schattenberg.
Additions to the agenda that the following items be added to the agenda. Delegation 7D, so there's an ABC that's one as well. These are additions. 7D, Dimitri Kakuhula, that's OP 18-07-8, ZN 8-18-10 for Picky Investments Incorporated. And there's a total of 8 additions. Delegation 7E is Thomas Smart. Delegation 7F, Adrian Jerlink. Delegation 7G, John Richardson. Delegation 7H, Linda Curra. Delegation 7I, Doug Steele. Delegation 7J, Levko Yusuf. And Delegation 7K, John Ruxton. All in the same matter.
Thank you. And we have a seconder for that motion. Councillor Fraser. Discussion? Seeing none, you've heard the motion. All those in favor? Carries. Unanimous. And we will start with our first delegation. So we have our 2018 consolidated financial statements. And we have Christine Scrimger. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I will go through the financial statements in the method I usually do. If anyone has any questions, please don't hesitate to ask those. They are draft financial statements, and until those charged with governance, which would be council, approves them, they will stay as draft, and therefore they are dated as of today's date. It is a new auditor's report. This came into effect for year endings after December 15th, 2018, which being December 31st, 2018, these fall within that. The auditor's report really states the same things it did in the past. It's just the opinion paragraph is now at the beginning, and it clearly lays out what the responsibilities of those charged with governance, again being council, and myself as your auditor hold. The other item is that in the past we issued an independence letter, and now that this report clearly indicates that I'm independent of the City of Woodstock, I no longer issue that letter. So I'll just go through the highlights of the financial statements, and again, please ask any questions. When I look at your page, so page 3 is your consolidated statement of financial position or your balance sheet, and I always look at the, as the auditor, the net financial assets, so that's about 3/4 of the way down the page, making sure that that number stays consistent or is increasing, and as you can see, it's increased by about $4 million. That really would be the amount of money you would have left in the bank account if all your assets or all your receivables were received and all your payables were paid out. You will note that the city did issue new long-term debt this year of just under $6 million. If you remember, at the end of 2017, there's significant work in progress of about $10 million, which then flows through, and we finance that through debt and reserve funds as those projects were completed. The other item I look at is your non-financial assets. So those are your tangible capital assets, ensuring that you're replacing those assets at a value at least equal to what your amortization is. So your amortization would be using up those assets. You want to be sure that you're replenishing those, and as you can see, that's definitely was the case in 2018. Net book value of your assets in 2017, just over $195 million. At the end of 2018, $205 million, and that's adding the work in progress with the capital assets. So a significant $10 million increase there, above and beyond what your amortization of $8 million was. Coming down to accumulated surplus at the end of the year of $261 million. However, that doesn't mean you have $261 million in the bank. That would be almost all invested in your tangible capital assets, other than that $56 million that I mentioned before. Any questions on that statement? definitely a good news financial statement for the city. The next statement is your consolidated statement of operations and accumulated surplus. I'll remind council that we do not budget for amortization, and that is, as I mentioned, just almost 9 million, actually about 8.8 million each for this 2018 year. And so your expenditures compared to your budget of 2018 is out by about that 8.9 million, which makes sense, which means that your expenditures were kept in line with what the budgeted amounts were. Under revenue, it is over budget, but it is mainly due to a couple reasons, one being land sales, which are then transferred into your reserve, and then the interest earned on your legacy reserve fund, which also is maintained in that reserve fund. So almost all of that excess was transferred over to reserves, other than the general operating surplus, which we'll see in a minute. The items down below that other revenue, those are revenues that change significantly from year to year based on what your capital activity is. And so we bring them out of your operations to ensure they don't skew that number. And that number is really that 3.5 million, which is really your net operating surplus, again, up from 308,000 last year. Any questions on that statement? Seeing none, I'll continue through. The next statement is your statement of cash flows. I won't spend a lot of time on this. This just shows the increases and decreases of your non-cash items on your balance sheet. The next statement is the statement I would like you to look at. It is your consolidated statement of change in net financial assets, and this is really where you can see that reinvestment in capital. You'll see there the acquisition of tangible capital assets of 24 million, your amortization of just under 9 million. So replenishing those assets at a rate higher than your amortization. Any questions on that? The next few pages are your notes to the financial statements. I would ask you to turn to note number 9, which is a breakdown of that accumulated surplus that we talked about on the balance sheet. And that's where you see your operating surplus of 1.6 million versus 2 million last year, so fairly consistent. And then the rest of that surplus is made up of unfunded liabilities for post-retirement. So those are based on your contracts for mainly your officers, both within police and fire, retire. We have benefits paying to them until the age of 65. And then your reserves and your reserve funds, both of those have increased as well, which shows your stability as a municipality. At the back of the financial statements are two schedules, one showing the schedule that equals what your FIR will be when it's sent to Ministry of Municipal Affairs, and then the last one is the breakdown of your capital assets by components. Any questions on the financial statements at all? As well, you have within your package the trust fund financial statement. I won't spend a lot of time on that one unless there's any questions. It's fairly consistent with the prior year, 258,000 at the end of 2017, 276,000 at the end of 18. With some monies coming over to the city of Woodstock, which meet the criteria for the trust funds that can be spent on projects within the city. Take this opportunity, as I always do, to thank the director and the deputy treasurer who's sitting behind me, who put an awful lot of work into getting these financial statements ready. And I think we've beat the record. We're mid-May this year, so that's great.
Well, thank you very much for the presentation and for your work that you've done here with our staff at the city. And definitely staff is to be commended, and council is very pleased with the progress that we continue to make as a community and the investments that we're continuing to make. So any further questions of council? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And get back to the beginning here. So our next delegation is Chris Eby regarding paratransit. Welcome.
Thank you, sir. Most of you counselors know where my heart is and what needs to be done. I know you can't disapprove the busing for longer hours, but Mr. Schonenberg and I are both on the Disability Committee. I'm not here as the Disability Committee. I'm here as a private citizen. I've had lots of discussion with Mr. Accioni and Mr. DeHaan. And it's time that City Council approves some kind of a committee to look at how can we look at our special people, our challenged people, and give them the same service, the same priorities as other people get. You go to a Navy vet game, and I've told Mr. DeHaan this several times, and he made this statement to me, oh, I don't want to be discriminatory against regular people, if you want to call it that. But go to a Navy vet game. You'll see people like Jennifer Harrington, Jeff from 72 Pavey Street, and a bunch more that can't stay for the hockey game because Voyager says, oh, no, I'm sorry, but we have no openings at 9:45, or we have no openings at 9:30. You have to go home at 9:45 or 9 o'clock. Is that fair that they've come out to volunteer? Jennifer Harrington works at the ticket sales table till 8:30. She might, if she's real lucky, get to see 10 minutes of the hockey game before she has to leave again. Are they not people the same as all of us here? And I would urge you, I come with 10 years experience of paratransit, committee, on the board of paratransit in the region of Waterloo. There are a lot of things we can do. The cabs were hurt when Mr. DeHaan and council made the decision to bring Voyager in. You took a lot of things away from the cabs. It's time we look at getting our cabs involved again. How would you like to wait in February at Giant Tiger outside for an hour and a half for a cab? Because nobody has a cab on at night or all the time. They sit at their offices, and if you want a cab and you call United or Kendall or even Woodstock, they have to bring a driver in off the road that's in a car to get their wheelchair car, the paratransit van, to do a call. That's not fair either at night when it's below zero or cold. You got to remember also, I think some people look at it as a business. Forget looking at it as a business. Because if you were to sit down and figure out what it costs to make one of those buses profitable, it would be about $30 every time somebody got on the bus. Church on Sundays, $22 a week now since the dollar increase. These people are on ODSP. By the time somebody like my friend Jim Bold pays his rent, pays for food, pays what he needs to at WDDS, he hasn't got that much less. Staff they're so short staffed now, they can't afford to have extra staff on to take these guys to church. Tina from Bingham comes to Maranatha. She pays $22 like Jim does a week to go to church. That's not right either. That's not fair. We're trying to tell them that they can't have the same ideas, the same worship, the same thing as we have because we've got a car or a bike or whatever. And I would urge council to look at it. I'd be more than happy to sit down with any of you and work with you on how can we fix this. So that's all I got to say, but if you've got any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Questions of council? Well, I want to thank you very much. Of course, if you had sat down with me before the delegation request, you could have learned a little bit of some of the information that's been going on here at council. We've applied for some additional grants to look at the routes. Of course, going back to voucher systems with taxi companies, that's something that we cannot do anymore. That can't be entertained. And whatever changes we make for paratransit would also be the same changes for regular transit. So I know this time during our budget deliberation, council had options in front of them to continue to extend the hours, and it's something that many of us would like to see. We have made great strides in the last few years with the extended service hours, and for both the paratransit and for the regular transit. And I think as we see these applications come back from the senior level government, we might be able to re-examine some things, and definitely for the 2020 budget, we'll have more things to consider. So thank you very much for your time tonight. Our next delegation is Virginia Armstrong, and we have the 2019 budget for the BIA. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Birch. And good evening, everyone. On behalf of the Board of Management for the Downtown Woodstock BIA, I would like to make a request for council to approve a 1% increase of our budget for 2019. This is the norm. This is what we have done in the past. And with that approval, then at the next council meeting, we will bring the balanced budget and do that presentation at that time.
Thank you. Questions of council? Seeing none, thank you very much. Our next delegation is Dimitri Kakula regarding the OP 18-07-8 ZN 8-18-10 for 140 and 160 Ferguson Drive. I saw Dimitri earlier. You got a couple more seconds or we're gonna kill the mic. Just kidding, Dimitri. Welcome.
Good evening, Your Honor Mayor, honorable council members. My name is Dimitri Kakula, and I am owner of the apartment building located on 550 Parkinson Road. This development was proposed is adjacent to my property to southeast and southwest lines, and I have significant concern over proposed development as it impacts my property by and surrounding properties by affecting sunlight, views, traffic flow, and privacy. The proposed development does not appeal to comply with the official plan on the following points. The official plan designates the area as Southside Community Planning Area that permits a maximum of 5-story residential buildings. The developer proposed 7- and 8-story high-rise buildings that are inconsistent with the official plan. The official plan designates the high-density residential should have direct access to arterial and collector roads. Ferguson Drive is not designated as such under the official plan. The official plan designates the high-density residential development to result from a gradual transition from low-profile residential to higher-profile residential. On Ferguson, there's only 1, 2, and 3-story residential building. 7- and 8-story is not gradual transition and would greatly degrade the character of the neighborhood on Ferguson Drive. The proposed building site plan does not meet the zoning bylaw requirement on the number of parking spaces, even with the reduction of units as now proposed. This shortfall will undoubtedly cause an increase in the number of cars parking directly on Ferguson Drive, and it will increase the congestion to normal traffic flow that now exists. The official plan designates the multi-level residential building will be sufficiently separated from each other to ensure privacy and avoid prolonged period of shadowing, especially during winter months. By study provided by GSP Group shows that the proposed structure will less than 50 feet from my basic also senior apartment, and the shadow will cover the most of the day, and the such time is especially in the winter times. As proposed, the site plan will make accessibility to the rear yard of Bezi Osta senior apartment impossible for emergency vehicles, and safe emergency exit for the senior residential will be cut off. I would please ask the council to comply with the official plan to ensure that proper amount of parking that is required by the zoning and to maintain the green space required for the adequate privacy buffer zone between my building and developer building. Also to ensure that safe topographical elevation changes between properties and maintain the safe existing access and fire exit for the senior residents. In the southeast of my building, also the private fire hydrant, that will be not possible to access by the fire department if this development will come. Thank you for your consideration, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Questions of council? Seeing none, thank you very much. And our next delegation is Thomas Smart regarding the same property and application. Welcome. And I know a lot of you have gone through this once already when we had the meeting back a while ago. So just I'll remind everyone now, as we go through each time, it'll be new issues that haven't been discussed by the previous individuals. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Our property, 176 Ferguson Drive, is on the south side of this proposed development known as Beacon's Way. And so we're named after the landmark out there, Beacon Tower. It's sad to see that structure, the proposed structure, to be demolished. It's incredible that the city wouldn't consider doing something to that structure other than rip it down. The other concern that maybe hasn't been taken into consideration is the people of Langton Hall. The senior residents there, they walk down Ferguson towards the park all the time in walkers and canes and such. So additional traffic could be a major concern for them. Parking has been raised before, and that's a main concern. On the dividing line between 176 Ferguson Drive and this new proposed development, if it should proceed, we would certainly want some kind of a privacy fence built that would divide our properties from the new development, privacy versus security. And so, thank you. And, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Questions of council? Seeing none. Our next delegation, we have Adrian Jerlink. Same property, same application. Welcome.
Good evening, everybody. I live on 127 Ferguson Drive. Our concern is water drainage from the area. The elevation of the property involved is some 14 feet higher than the surface of Ferguson Drive. Some 50% of the area currently is green space. with some self-draining capacity. On May 1, 2 weeks ago, we had a day rain of about 10 millimeters. I made some pictures. That picture right there shows that day the rain coming down. You can see Ferguson Drive is full of water. The drain is getting somewhat clogged, and most of the water comes from the right, from this property we're talking about. Next picture, please. There you see in the background the current tower on top of the hill. Again, you can see all the water coming down on that day when it is not really a big rainstorm. Next picture. Here you can see around the corner what comes from above, and that's washout what ends up downhill, and the water ends up on Ferguson Drive. Picture 4. This is the main picture showing where the water all ends up. I live right across this property, proposed property, and the water comes down, and you see my arrows on the picture, and it ends up basically in 3 ditches behind our condos, meaning that those ditches are what they sometimes call French drain ditches, have to take all that water, and on many stormy days it cannot handle it today. Also, we have already some complaints of water in basements. Picture, that's it, picture 4. What will happen if the whole area of that lot becomes pavement, cement, and roofing? We have already, we know we cannot handle that water in the back of our condos. This is all I want to talk about this. It is a major project to make that water go somewhere else, I'm sure. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Questions of council?
No.
No. Thank you very much. And our next presenter, we have John Richardson on the same application and same property. Welcome.
Good evening. Good evening. I've stood here several times. You may even recognize me now. And one of the big questions I've asked from whoever's going to listen to me is, why do we need 70 student units, equating to about 140 students, and also 8 stories high? I still haven't got an answer. So what I did yesterday, I phoned the college at the back, Fanshawe, and I said to them, you know, why do you want these 70 units? And they said, what are you talking about? I said, well, they're going to build 70 units. They're talking about students, and the only thing I can think of is Fanshawe College. I don't know, we haven't got a university. I don't think we've got another college. They have no interest in student housing, except they do like, if the people come, they would like to find a place for them to stay. But they're saying that they have no interest now or in the future to have student housing. So I guess my question again is, why do we need an 8-story, 70-unit student building? Like I say, equating to probably 140. There's 2 students to a unit. Anybody answer? Can you answer my question? Or?
I sure can. So Fanshawe College has no affiliation with this property. This is not something that they're putting forward. Perhaps in the beginning it shouldn't have been referred to as student housing, but Out of the two buildings, one is specifically designed for seniors. The other will be specifically designed for young people. It happens to be located next to a college that is very busy and has programs expanding, and we hope in the near future that they will continue to expand in our community. In other communities that have colleges and universities, private investors that gear apartment buildings to young people, it gets filled up with those college students. But again, no affiliation with Fanshawe College, so they wouldn't know about the application or what's going on.
No.
And there has been one update. It actually is 7 stories now for that building rather than the 8 stories. Any
Well-
further questions of council? All right.
Okay, moving on from that, we're getting a bit further. The planners had recommended all this, and I was a bit probably nasty to them. I asked them if they live where we would they recommend it. Didn't get much of an answer for that. But what we would like to see as taxpayers and people that live around this area that moved in thinking this was a low to medium density area is now being changed to high density. We don't want high density. We love low density, but we know we're not going to get that, but we'd probably tolerate medium density. And if we could get them down from the 7 to 4 or 5, I think the people around there would start to believe that this was a viable, a future development, and we'll be able to live with it. But I ask all you here, if you lived where I am, do you want an 8-story building, which is on top of a hill already, overlooking all around you? I know you wouldn't. I mean, you can't sit there and tell me probably the truth, but I know underneath you would not want it. So think about all our people that are living around there, that are taxpayers, that hard-working people thought they were going to live in a nice spot and not have all this happen to them. So my recommendation is 4 or 5 stories. That's only my personal opinion, but that's what I'd recommend. So that was probably covering my 2 things, which was the student thing and the high density, which I'd put down. But I wanted to finish with a kind of a lighter note. I stood on my deck the other day, about a week and a half ago, nice day, and I was looking out to where the back of Fanshawe is and the Ball Diamonds and complex. And I saw 5 students walking along carrying a picnic table that they, I think, picked up from behind the Civic Centre. Not the Civic Centre, the Rec Centre. So if you're missing a picnic table somewhere, I can tell you where it is. So they took it along and they went through the bush when we talked about the trespassing and down there. And in the bush, in the subject land, they've got the picnic table in the middle there so they can sit. And I was thinking to myself, if I was stuck on a desert island, these are the kids I'd want with me, because they've got an initiative to carry that down so they could have their little picnic in the bush. And I thought, you know what, there's some good in these kids. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any
Questions
questions?
of council? We have Councillor Talbot.
Mayor, through to Mr. Richardson. And I've been present at both the planning meetings where you've spoken, so you've spoken about a couple of things. So I just want to be clear. Is it the height or the density? Because the existing lighthouse right now is 9 stories.
But it's not.
No, I know. So it's the density more so than the height?
Well, I don't know how to answer that really. I think it's the height really. Because when it becomes the same height as the beacon.
It won't be.
Hmm?
It won't be,
Well,
because the beacon's nine stories.
Yeah. so 8 stories
Okay.
is just a little bit less, but going a huge building long, right?
Okay, so it's the density.
Okay, well, if that's what that means, then.
Yeah, I think it's more because the height is going to be less than what the lighthouse actually is,
Yeah,
but it's the mass, I think, of the buildings. I just want to be clear on that. And also, I was trying to go back through my notes that I'd made from the 2 previous meetings, because you had also mentioned about the implosion and
Yes.
what was going to happen about that. Remind me how we found out it was going to be imploded.
well, there's signs up on the property.
That's how it is. Okay, I just
Like,
wanted,
You know how they do it, information signs
okay,
of what's going on with this property?
I missed that, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, because I went back through my notes and we were talking about it earlier and I'm like, I can't.
Now, we
find
haven't got an answer on that yet,
No, I
because
know.
apparently they
That
can,
won't happen until after the
they can build the
application
building
is-
first, then blow the other one down after, so I don't understand that bit, but somebody kind of convinced me that that's the way it has to be.
Okay, thank you for clarifying those.
Yeah.
And Councillor Lauder.
I just wanted to mention too that with the present zoning, I've been given to understand that there could be an 8-story building built there now without ever coming to council with the present zoning for a retirement home or
Oh,
whatever.
okay. I don't know that.
Just wanted to mention that.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. And our next delegation, we have Linda Cura regarding the same OP. Oh, there we are. And we'll queue people up. While Linda's coming up, the next person on deck, move closer, will be Doug Steele. After Doug will be Levko Yusuf, and we'll welcome.
Thank you. As you know, everybody here is all after the same thing. We want you to take some more consideration for this proposed building, because after all, we're missing the last episode of The Big Bang Theory tonight. I'm speaking on behalf of all the members, the owners that reside in Oxford County Corporation number 63 on Ferguson Drive. We feel changing the zoning to R4 special is not in keeping with the existing surrounding developments, which are R3 and CF. The development proposal is asking for excessive concessions from the existing zoning and bylaw planning regulations that will negatively impact the existing residential neighborhood. Now, I could go on and read my whole speech, but everybody's gone over most of my main points here, so I will not continue with all of that. What I would like to mention is, Woodstock is basically a lot of retirement people. We've got a lot of people coming from Toronto and Kitchener, moving here, retiring here, because it's a little quieter community. But my thing is, if we're going to take all the extra spaces that we have in the city, like what we have across the road, and put 8-story high-rise buildings in all of these spots and cram everybody all in together, that we're going to create the same problem that those cities have with traffic, high density, and naturally higher prices for everything else. And, what would be the point of somebody moving to our community if it's going to be the same as what they're moving away from? So, and I think, all the people that live out in the country that are possibly going to retire or want to move back into town, they're not going to want to do that. If they're going to drive into town, they got to wait 10 minutes at every parking thing and corner and everything, and can't get around the city because we've got such high density areas. Nobody wants to move into an area and have an 8-story or a 7-story plunked in the middle of them right in front of their property. And I do believe that we would create quite a bit of extra traffic on our street on Ferguson Drive. I would invite any of you to come and sit on my front porch from 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock in the morning and just see how much traffic actually does drive by that street. I have only been there for 2 years now, and I was quite surprised after I got there as to how much traffic there actually was on that street. So because of all this, we have got together a petition from our condo corporation and the one next to us and a few other people in the neighborhood. I have about 80 signatures here. Who should I give that to? Okay, and that's about all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions of council? Seeing none. Doug Steele, come on up. We're dealing with the same OP. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council, and the public. My name is Doug Steele, live at 176 Ferguson Drive. It's been the home for 16 years. It's the first time I've had to come to council and attend a couple of public meetings because of a proposed development. We received a notice after September 24th regarding this proposal, and on October 17th met with a planner in the building across the street to raise some concerns. Since that meeting and following up on April 15th here in the council chambers and May 13th, where approximately 40 people attended each meeting voicing their concerns, there has not been any new proposals that have altered my decision to oppose this project based on the high density and the lack of green space. Need to be, keep in mind that support development, but development that fits the community and the neighborhood. This project clearly does not do that and should therefore not be supported. At the May 13th meeting, and after a month deferral, which the planning department and the developer had asked for, there continues to be unanswered questions around, and we heard the other night that there has been a traffic report. I would suggest to anybody in this room that there's been traffic reports done on Juliana and Norwich Avenue as well. Now, one only has to go there at 7 o'clock in the morning until 9, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and a few other times to see how traffic doesn't work. But there's a traffic report. And the other question that came up the other night was, will there be an on-site manager? The answer from the developer was, we don't know. We haven't thought about it. So there are a number of outstanding questions. The neighbors in the community were hoping that there would be answers to these things, since this is an incredible proposal and would change the character of the neighborhood and the community. We would encourage council to re-examine this plan and propose a medium to low density project in its place. After council's deliberations of this project, a decision may very well be made outside of these council chambers. I would request Woodstock City Council to support the community voters, our neighborhood, and reject this proposal and the planning department recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions of council? Seeing none, thank you very much. And next up, we have Levko Yusuf. Welcome. Same application, same property.
Mayor, council, and staff, I'd like to ask, the email submission that I sent earlier, would that then be in your possession? Yes. So I don't have to read that, and I can just summarize what I think is important. And we have only 5 minutes. Is my minute? You know, 5 minutes is good enough for a joke, but to give some input in this serious situation, perhaps it's not enough. But perhaps the joke is on all of us. You know, we've been, as the general public, we've been in this chamber 4 times, and tonight I'd like to be constructive, and I'd like to make some recommendations. I bow to the mayor and the council for the responsibility that you have tonight to make your decision, and I know that we will remember your decision, but we will not forget how it was made. It appears that with the pro-development mandate that Toronto is pushing on municipalities, it seems to us that your hands are tied. And perhaps it's a fait accompli. My recommendations now will relate to the email submission I made, and I will begin with the site plan issue. We've come here 4 times now and asked questions regarding the site, and we have received no answers because planning department says a site plan has not been submitted. Because there's no site plan, they cannot answer our questions. It seems to be very ironic that in your process, the general public has no input in the process of site plan approval. All the questions that we have asked have been unanswered. So my recommendation tonight is I'd like you to bend your process and allow the public to have some input in the site plan approval stage. Number 2, the traffic study done by your paid experts make assumptions, and sometimes the assumptions are based on ideal conditions. When the neighbor has told you, the neighborhood and the people representing the neighborhood have told you that there's congestion there, and then when you consider rainfall and winter conditions, perhaps some of the recommendations this traffic study has made is overlooking conditions, site conditions, construction conditions when the time is coming for that. So I recommend that you take a look at your parking issues on this street and perhaps think of not having parking allowed on the street, because the street is a local street, and I know and I can see that the congestion is just going to be increased with this new development. Now my last point is regarding the monastery, and perhaps for people here that are too young to know the history, they need to perhaps be told a little bit of the background of this monastery. Some people are still calling it a church, and I want to make sure you understand, a church is not a monastery. Please go to your dictionary and look for this definition to educate yourself. The Studite order was formed 1500 years ago in 500 AD under the power of Constantinople, which was the head of the Byzantine Empire, and at that time the head of the Christian world. These Studite monks practiced in Ukraine, and for many hundreds of years, under their charity work for the poor, the sick, the elderly, they provided spiritual and physical assistance to these people. Under the last Russian occupation of Ukraine, the anarchy that followed, all these Studite monks were massacred, executed, and sent to Siberia to starve in the gulags. The few monks that escaped, that came to Canada and settled in Woodstock in the early 50s, established this monastery with the help of the Ukrainian Canadian people that lived here, and with their assistance, they developed this monastery. Back then, you cannot perhaps realize that there were almost 100 acres of farmland that they practiced, growing food and taking care of their livestock in an organic way, even before the definition of organic was used in Canada. I bring to your attention that this is a historical icon that was developed in Canada, the only monastery developed in the Western world outside of Ukraine. And also now I'd like to bring question of the politics of the situation of the sale of this land. It seems perhaps the seller of this land does not have the legal authority to sell this land, and there will be a further investigation on the legality of how this land was sold. That is all from me tonight.
Thank you. Questions of council? Seeing none, our next is John Ruxton. Same application, same property. Welcome.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of council, most of the items that I had intended to speak on this evening have already been addressed, okay? So I'm not going to belabor those items. There are on your desks a little picture that I took the opportunity of taking out of the London Free Press. And I'm not normally a person that clips things out of the paper because I don't really believe a lot of them. But however, the picture didn't lie to me. And the picture is simply a picture of the street as Western moved out. How would you like that in your front yard? The thing is, the city of Kitchener does not or city of London doesn't pick up their garbage. The city of Woodstock does not have a pickup for that type of disaster, which I can understand. The county does not do anything for that because they wouldn't pick up the large items either. So that's left up to the people that own the building, and they've made no indication that they're prepared to look after the volume of garbage that is left at the time that these people move out. The thing is, as you're well aware, when garbage sits for 2 or 3 days, it goes from one end of the street to the other. So it becomes a real schmozzle, to be nice about it. The other thing that has bothered me is that when we put a building of this size in with young people in it, with young families, geared to income people, which is fine, but most of them are young people, and most of them do have young families, and they have no green space, so where are they going to go? They've got to go across through one of the nicest parks there is in Ontario, okay? But they've got to cross one of the busiest streets in Woodstock. They've got to have some type of protection, and as far as I can see, the developer has made no ways of protecting these people, and it certainly needs to be. The city, I believe, has indicated that they have done a traffic study on the intersection, and they said, well, fine, we have to widen that street. That's very good. But whose lot is it going to come off of? Is it going to come off mine? Is it going to come off the developers? Are we going to lose sidewalks? Are we going to lose our boulevards? Where else do you go? Okay? So we're going to lose. It doesn't matter where you put it. We're going to be a loser. I moved to Woodstock here 14 years ago from Barrie, and I moved here because it was a really nice, small city. It had some growth, which was fine and dandy, but it had areas that were, how would you call it, very quiet, okay? So I found one of those areas. I moved into that area, and I moved into it because it was a reasonably quiet neighborhood. I'm sorry, I had 3 sons who went to university and were quite popular, and I know what kind of a rigmarole that you go through with university kids. And mine were no different than anybody else's, but they certainly have to get out and rebel a certain amount, and I'm not sure I really want to see 70 or so university students having a big party or that type of thing right across the road from me. So if you take those things into consideration, you have to, look at all of the other items because they are all connected. The parking is connected, the water runoff, all of these things are connected to these several items. And, I think that if our planning committee had come along and said, we're going to build a 4-story or a 5-story unit across the road from you, I don't think you'd see anybody here. That's my personal opinion, mind you. But it's the high density and it's the great wall that the buildings built that are being proposed are going to make. You've got a great wall. You can see nothing else. There it is. So with those things in mind, I would like council to consider the people that are living there, because there are a lot of us. This whole building process is probably affecting at least 500 people when you look at the different areas around that particular building. For example, we have in our building, which is a multi-unit building, we have 74 units in it. I would say that we have almost 200 people living there. So, it's not as if we're against all of this, because we're really not. But what we are is saying to you, let's cut it down a bit. Keep it with the type of community interest that we've all been accustomed to. Okay? So with those thoughts in mind, I'm going to leave it with you, because I can give you a whole lot of other things, but, they've already been discussed, and I'm not going to be, drag them all out.
Thank you. Questions of council? And before you came to Woodstock, there would have been meetings that took place like this for your development where everybody said that that was going to wreck the peace in the neighborhood. And each time there's changes, we seem to go through it. But I think this council's very responsive, and we're going to have a discussion as we get to the item later on in the planning agenda. So thank you.
The units that we live in, I believe, have been there about 27 years, 28, somewhere there. You're well aware of where they are, I know.
Yep.
And, we moved into that area because we could look out over the golf course and we could look out over the gardens.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay.
Now, I didn't see, is Chris Camboya present in the gallery? Didn't see him. He's not out in the wings. Okay, so we will not add that delegation. So our next item is consideration of delegations. So looking for a recommendation on our 2018 financial statements. Whoever can get back to that spot quick enough. Councillor Tate.
I'll make the motion that the draft 2018 consolidated financial statements for the City of Woodstock and the trust funds as prepared by Scrimminger and Company be approved, and further that Woodstock City Council accepts the statement of independence to management or persons having oversight, responsibility for the financial reporting process with respect to the corporation of the City of Woodstock within the meaning of the rules of professional conduct of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Ontario as of May 16th, 2019 by Scrimminger and Company.
Thank you. And the seconder, Councillor Fraser. Discussion? Seeing none, the city is in very good financial health. All those in favor? Carries, unanimous. Next one on the agenda is the paratransit. Councillor Schattenberg.
The Woodstock City Council received the request from Mr. Chris Eby regarding paratransit extended hours as information.
Thank you, and seconded by Councillor Accioni. Discussion? Seeing none, you've heard the motion. All those in favor? Carries, unanimous. Next one is for the BIA. Councillor Fraser.
That Woodstock City Council approved the downtown Woodstock BIA 2019 levy in the amount of $1,870, which I think equates to 1% increase. And further, the downtown Woodstock BIA provide a revised 2019 balanced budget to council in the future.
Thank you. And a seconder, Councillor Lauder. Discussion? Seeing none, I think it's always great when we see things that are less than inflation, so they're being very responsive here. You've heard the motion. All those in favor? Carries. Unanimous. And that will bring us to planning matters, and we have the first one, which is the zone change for Hunnett Corporation. Councillor Talbot?
I'll move that Woodstock City Council approve the application for zone changes file ZN 81905 submitted by Unit Corporation for lands described as Lot 265, Plan 678, Lot 5 and Part Lots 3, 4, Plan 516, as in 434950 and Parts 1 and 2, 41R 3060 in the City of Woodstock, whereby the lands are proposed to be rezoned from Restricted Industrial Zone M2 to Special Restricted Industrial Zone M210, and further that any comments received from the public were reviewed and considered before the decision was made in relation to this planning matter.
Thank you. And a seconder, Councillor Lauder. Ms. Haschler.
Thank you. So this application, as Councillor Talbot pointed out, is to rezone the subject lands from Restricted Industrial Zone M2 to Special Restricted Industrial Zone Restricted Industrial Zone M2-10 to permit a retail outlet of approximately 12,000 square feet in area. The the applicant is proposing, first of all, to sell a range of items such as furniture, housewares, and clothing, and that is what's also being stored in the warehousing component of the business. The property currently has a building that occupies 3.2 acres, and the proposed use is currently leasing 32,000 square feet within the building, and the retail component will be, the warehousing component will be 20,000 square feet, and the retail will be 12,000 square feet. No exterior renovations are being proposed at this time. The official plan policies make provisions for retail components as accessory uses to industrial uses. And the permissions allow up to 50% of the gross leasable floor area of a permitted use. Building staff commented on the application. They indicated that there's adequate parking for the retail component. There's about 40 spaces that would be required for the retail component, and that could be provided in the front parking lot. And then the remainder of the industrial building would require about 60 parking spaces, and that could also be accommodated on the site, as there is actually a significant amount of parking. In addition to that, staff are satisfied that the application is consistent with the provincial policy statement, as it's a use of an existing building. It's a good use of an existing building. It promotes economic development and competitiveness, as well as it provides opportunities for a diversified economic base within the city. Additionally, as I just indicated, we are supportive of the application as it's consistent with the official plan policies. It's also located in an area which is generally a mix of service commercial uses as well as industrial uses. And so to have a service commercial type use being the retail along the front part of the building, we've thought was suitable for that area. We also don't feel that this use will compete with uses in the downtown, as the retail component is associated with the warehousing component, and a site in the downtown would not be large enough to accommodate such a use. I should also note that today council should have received late correspondence from a neighboring property owner, and the concerns were related to traffic, noise from potential construction and the business operation, and also pedestrian congestion. However, staff don't feel that there would be an increase in traffic. We are not concerned with construction noises, as there's no construction being proposed for the subject use. In light of that, we would recommend favorable consideration, and we have provided an amending bylaw which does impose a maximum square footage for the retail space.
Thank you. Questions of council? Seeing none, you've heard the motion. All those in favor? Carries. unanimous. And the next one on the agenda is for the 300 Juliana Drive for the new seniors units near Woodingford in the hospital. Councillor Lauder.
I'll move that Woodstock City Council approve the zone change application file number ZN 8-19-12 submitted by the County of Oxford for lands illegally described as Part Lot 21, Concession 2, and Part Lot 17, Plan 1616 in the City of Woodstock to rezone the lands from Community Facilities Zone C5 to Special Community Facilities Zone CF-18 to address deficiencies in lot frontage, parking, and interior side yard widths, and further that any comments received from the public were reviewed and considered before the decision was made in relation to this planning matter.
Thank you. And a seconder, Councillor Talbot. Ms. Hashler.
Okay, thank you. So this application is to rezone the subject lands from community facility zone to a special community facility zone to make provisions for reductions in lot frontage, parking, and the interior side yard widths. The proposal for the subject lands will be to allow a 7-story retirement home. It was called retirement home in the report, but I wanted to point out more specifically that the applicant spoke to council on the public on Monday night, and he indicated that it's more of an assisted living care facility with 24/7 staffing in the building. And there will be 177 rooms, and there will be a shared dining facility. And the rooms will just have kitchenettes, so it's not individual apartment units. The applicant also submitted a traffic impact study and a shadow study in support of the proposal. I should mention too that access is being proposed from Southwood Way as well as from Juliana. The access that's coming from Juliana will be over an existing fire route, and it will be shared amongst the proposal that came to council a couple months ago. I believe there's 24 townhouse units on this side, and so they will share that fire route as well as Woodingford will use it. The applicant also indicated that through conversations with staff and the neighboring development, they are going to upgrade that fire route. They're going to widen it, and they'll put a sidewalk in for the residents of all 3 facilities. Oh, the other thing I was going to mention is that the 177 units qualify as affordable retirement units, and the applicant has agreed to enter into an agreement with the county to ensure that these units remain affordable for the next 20 years. So I should speak more specifically to the request for a reduction in the zoning provisions. So the lot frontage request is from 20 meters to 9.5 meters. The interior side yard width is from 5 meters to 4 meters, 2.8 meters, and 1.5 meters. The parking spaces are being reduced from 59 spaces to 48 spaces. And a question came up on Monday night as well about the parking spaces. And just to be clear, it's 1 space is required for every 3 rooms. And so that's why the requirement is 59. And the applicant is also requesting to reduce the parking area setback from 1.5 meters to 0. In light of the proposal, staff feel that the application is consistent with the provincial policy statement as it promotes a mix of housing types to meet social, health, and well-being requirements, and its efficient use of lands and municipal services and infrastructure. The applicant is proposing to include a retaining wall along the west side of the property with a landscaped buffer, so that'll act as a barrier between the existing residential units and the parking area. So that will help with compatibility to ensure that no light is spilling over into the rear of those properties. The applicant also provided a shadow study, and the shadow study showed that there was not going to be a significant shadowing effect on neighboring properties. The traffic impact study indicated that with the extension of Stonegate Drive as well as access from Southwood and Juliana, they didn't feel that there would be a significant amount of traffic or a significant increase in the area for traffic. Additionally, we felt that the application is consistent with the official plan as it's providing housing types for low and moderate income people, and also then obviously adding to the affordable housing stock. The request to reduce the frontage we felt is supportable, as the applicant is providing adequate access with a shared access with the development to the northwest, and so we feel that the frontage reduction is acceptable, and also the setbacks to the side yards is also acceptable, as the one setback is obviously to the Whittingford Lodge site and a parking area, so we don't feel any negative effects there. And then the other one is to the south, which is against the Woodstock Hospital site, which there's a significant grade drop, so we don't think that there would be any issues there either. The parking too, we are supportive of, as we feel that there is little need for cars for the majority of the residents in this building. And basically, the applicant indicated to us on Monday night that they feel generally the parking is mostly going to be for staff. So they feel that there is an adequate amount of parking spaces in addition to what staff would use. The rest of the requests were due to or were related to parking setbacks, and we feel that those are generally technical in nature and appropriate for this development. And in light of our review, we would recommend favorable consideration.
Thank you. Questions of council. Councillor Talbot.
Yeah, through to Andrea. Sorry, I didn't ask this the other night. The parking on Stonegate and Southwood Way, is it parking on both sides of the street? Do you know? Or maybe Mr. DeHaan can answer that.
Your Worship, through the councillor, I don't know exactly. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm fairly confident that it's on both sides.
Okay. Sorry, thank you. And the parking still is of concern to myself, and but it also is the need for the housing, which our community desperately needs. I wonder that if the applicant could be encouraged to talk to the hospital, as I know the hospital is also, I think, in need of more parking. If there could be some type of parking put behind the retaining wall so that they'd only have to go up a few steps to reach the main level, and maybe it could be a shared type of parking. But I just am concerned that the route from Juliana through the Whittingford property isn't going to be wide enough to accommodate parking on either side. I doubt it's going to have that opportunity, and I still am concerned with parking. Those are just some suggestions.
Thank you. Councillor Fraser.
Worship, through to Andrea. I questioned you a lot on the other different proposal of the 24 units, and I remember that clearly, but and I'm sorry I missed this the other night, but I call it a fire route through the county property for Whittingford Lodge. Did you said that they're going to widen the fire route and provide a sidewalk for pedestrians?
Through the mayor to Councillor Fraser, yes, my understanding is that they will widen it and have a sidewalk, because my understanding is that the Whittingford residents like to walk in that area, and so to accommodate the fire route as well as pedestrian safety in the area, they thought that it would be appropriate to have a sidewalk.
So would this be a responsibility of the county or a responsibility of the developer, because it's county land that the fire route goes through? So I would think this would almost be a responsibility of the county to widen that, provide a sidewalk, and ensure that there's no parking of vehicles on that fire route, because it's a fire route. The fire trucks need to get through.
Through the mayor to Councillor Fraser. My understanding is that you're correct. It is like it'll stay on the Woodingford site, so it'll be the responsibility of the county. However, they are working on agreements with both the townhouse developer and the apartment developer, in that the cost would be shared for the upgrades that are going to be done to the fire road.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions of council? Seeing none, you've heard the motion. All those in favor? Carries. Unanimous. The next one on the agenda is the OP and zone change for 140 and 160 Ferguson Drive. Councillor Tate?
I'm going to make a motion to defer the application to provide the applicant the opportunity to consider design alternatives to address deficiencies with the residential floor zoning. And if I can speak to it, if I can.
Seconder, Councillor Talbot and Councillor Tate.
Okay, so I'm making the motion to defer, and I don't want to give anybody false hope about this application, because once an application comes forward and it does have a positive planning recommendation, if we turn it down, it's just going to go to the OMB and it's going to get approved anyways. This developer lives in town. He has a young family. He's very invested here. He's bought other properties and has done amazing work. He will work with the staff and with the residents. He's very cooperative. And I think the main issue that some of us have is the number of units with the parking, and we don't want the parking on the street. So that was my concern, but if anybody else wants to speak to it.
Thank you. Councillor Talbot?
Thank you. I'm hoping that Councillor Tate might have a friendly amendment so that we could add maybe a little more of the deficiencies that have been recognized by the residents. So I'm thinking in that motion, so to allow them the opportunity to look at the height and the number of units, parking definitely. Does it have to be students? Snow storage, the implosion as opposed to a wrecking ball coming in and knocking the thing down. Green space is not as much a thing with Southside Park being so close and with the fields being in behind, but I think if we add those to the motion to amend, it will address and answer the concerns of the people here. And just to reiterate what Councillor Tate has already, I was going to say Talbot, but that's me. What Councillor Tate has already said. The developer does live in this community, and he's already developed some property and does an amazing job. But I also think he is invested in this community. But I think he also listens, and I mean, he's going to be here, and he's going to be doing other developments, and I think he wants to make sure that the community is as happy as they can be, because as has been stated, he could just walk away from this, go to the OMB, and it'll be approved because it's already in our planning. It's got a positive report. So I do believe that he will work with us, and I think addressing, just to get some answers for the neighbors, and possibly there's been some ideas of stepping the building, just doing some different things, having a discussion. So if Councillor Tate would do the friendly amendment, I would appreciate it.
I would like to interject before a friendly amendment is done, and like to say that, yes, the individual has a lot of opportunity to deal with some of these concerns. I don't think we want to be so prescriptive in our motion. If you perhaps have it that it's to address the concerns that have been raised and noted already, and we'll see what comes back, rather than going into too much detail, because as we've already stated, we know that there's stuff that could happen with that property that would be much different than what the neighborhood would like to see without our approval. So let's not be too bold in our motion, and let's just start the conversation and see what comes back if we go with a deferral.
I have no problem with that, as long as, because this has already been put over, and as quite a few of the residents have already stated, there were no answers to the questions that were asked. So I mean, we need to have the questions answered so that there's at least, they know what the answer is. And I did miss one, was water. So I don't mind having it more generic, as long as we get answers to those questions as well.
So we'll have all of that taken care of. It's all been documented if you keep the motion the way it is. Further discussion from council on a deferral. Councillor Accioni?
Thank you, Your Worship. More just a general statement to all the neighbors. I just want to say you've been heard. You were great during the public meetings. Thank you very much. And we are going to try to work with the developer the best we can to make something acceptable, just knowing there's going to be something, okay? That's all. Thank you.
Councillor Schadenberg?
Through the mayor to the planner. Andrew, we had talked earlier about the fact that medium density 4 stories versus higher than that becomes high density. There seems to be a real trend lately. We saw it on Metcalf Street, for example, where parking is indoors on the main floor. So if you're limited to 4 stories for medium density, then you have 3 residential levels above that. Can you just maybe explain it to ourselves and to the entire audience how basically how that works? Because you could have 6 stories, but it wouldn't necessarily be 6 stories of residential or 7 or 8 stories for that matter.
Through the mayor to Councillor Schadenberg, I hope I understand your question properly. But I think what we discussed is that, yes, if the maximum in the official plan is 4 stories, if there's a level of parking, then you only get 3 stories. Like, it's the total height of everything. And so in this case, the applicant was proposing a 7-story and an 8-story, and each building was going to have parking on the ground floor. So it would have been 6 and 7 stories of residential.
Thank you. And thank you for that, Ms. Hatchler. You've heard the motion. All those in favor? Carries. Unanimous. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is the consideration of correspondence, and we have the 20th Annual Relay for Life. Councillor Fraser.
That the correspondence received from the Canadian Cancer Society regarding the 20th Annual Relay for Life request for in-kind support from various city departments be supported. And further, that the request from the Canadian Cancer Society to extend the provisions of the noise bylaw to allow the use of a sound system from 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. be supported.
Thank you. And a seconder, Councillor Tate. Discussion? Seeing none. You've heard the motion. All those in favor? Carries. Unanimous. Let's see. So, final tax rates. And the good thing is it doesn't sound all that bad when you take into consideration all of the improvements we've had in service and our programs here, both at the city and the county, combined with the education rate. The treasurer will be able to verify that I'm still giving out the right number. The average increase for residential property will be 0.31%, so just under $50, so much lower than the cost of inflation. Who would be prepared to pass that motion? So, Councillor Accioni.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself that Woodstock City Council approves the final tax rates and that the necessary bylaw be read.
And seconded by Councillor Lauder. Discussion? Seeing none, you've heard the motion. All those in favor? Carries. Next is the Statement of Revenue and Expenditure ending April 30th. Councillor Lauder.
I'll move that Woodstock City Council receive the Statement of Revenue and Expenditure for the period ending April the 30th, 2019 as information.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Accioni. Discussion? Seeing none, you've heard the motion. All those in favor? Carries. Next up, we have our tender award for the addition and renovation over at the Public Works facility. Councillor Accioni.
Moved by myself, the Woodstock City Council award the tender for the Public Works and Engineering Addition Renovation Project to PK Construction, Inc. in the amount of $838,686 inclusive of HST.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Schattenberg. Discussion? Councillor Lauder.
Through the mayor to Mr. DeHaan, in the report, it did mention, I think, that the staff would be moving down to the golf course that building that we have. So maybe just for the public, so that they know that that isn't something permanent, and maybe you could speak to that.
Your Worship, through the councillor, yes. In order to get the best possible price for the construction, we told the contractors during the bidding process that we would vacate the portion of the building So all the staff currently in that half of the building will be moving to the down Cedar Creek during the course of during the course of construction. We'll have temporary offices set up there. It will be open to the public down there, and then once construction is done, we'll be moving back to James Street.
Thank you. Councillor Schattenberg.
From the mayor, I guess, to Harold DeHaan as well, our engineer. Just want, I guess, more than clarification than anything else. The city, through the capital budget, had approved $940,000. The successful bidder, PK Construction of Tilsonburg, is $838,686. When you break down between consultant fees and architectural drawings and HST and everything else, is this bid actually coming in under a budget of $940,000 or at budget or higher than budget?
Your worship, through the councillor, if you look at the report, there is a breakdown there showing the consultant and the HST and the contract amount, and that leaves us, using the 940 budget amount, that leaves us with a contingency amount of about $92,000.
Thank you. Further questions of council? Seeing none, you've heard the motion. All those in favor? Carries. Unanimous. Next item on the agenda is the amendments to the traffic bylaw. Councillor Fraser.
The Woodstock City Council refer the report for amendments to the traffic bylaw 8021-04 to the bylaws section of the meeting.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Tate. Discussion? Seeing none, you've heard the motion. All those in favor? Carries. Unanimous. And next we have the proposed land swap at 820 to 852 Alice Street. Councillor Tate.
I'll move that Woodstock City Council approve a one-for-one land swap between Homer Brown Park and 820-852 Alice Street, subject to the satisfactory completion of a zone change, and further that Woodstock City Council authorize staff to file a zone change application to effect the necessary zoning bylaw changes, and further that the mayor and the clerk be authorized to sign purchase and sale agreements to effect this land swap, and further that the necessary bylaw be brought forward at such time as the zoning bylaw has been amended.
Thank you. And the seconder, Councillor Fraser. Discussion? Councillor Fraser.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through to Mr. Connors. Good report, but could you just summarize it for the public?
Your Worship, through to the councillor's question, what this will do is we're planning to, if council approves, planning to swap some land that that is owned by the city and owned by a private individual. And basically what we're swapping out is we'll get some more park frontage, and they're just going to add on a little bit to the back of their condo residence, and it's right at the top of the hill. So as far as usability for the public, we're getting a much bigger bang for our buck.
Councillor Schattenberg. Oh, follow up. Councillor Fraser.
Yeah, what I liked about your report is the explanation of encroachment, that in the previous years, the residents of those units, townhouse units, were encroaching on city land, which happened for so long, there's nothing we could do about it, if I'm correct. But now the owner of the property is willing to swap out some land so that it ends the issue of encroachment, because I know historically around some parks we've had encroachment issues before that had been dealt with.
Your Worship, through the councillor's question, yes, we do have, like a lot of cities do have some encroachment around our parks, and this certainly will clear up this one.
Thank you. Councillor Schattenberg.
I guess through the mayor, more just of a comment than anything else. People always want to know where do these park names and whatnot come from. Just want to state that Homer Brown was actually a member of City Council for 14 years, and he was mayor of the city of Woodstock in 1861. Back then they did mayor races every year and city council races every single year, elections, and Homer Brown was mayor in 1861. A lot of the parks, of course, in the city of Woodstock are named after former mayors. Just want to make a comment on that. People say, well, who the heck was Homer Brown?
Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none, you've heard the motion. All those in favor? Carries. Unanimous. Next item on the agenda, we have the proposed oil stream construction extension. Councillor Accioni.
Moved by myself, the Woodstock City Council support an extension of 1 year until May 31st, 2020 to complete the structure covering 10% of the lot area on the original parcel, and further that the option of the adjoining 2.82 acre parcel also be extended until May 31st, 2020, and that it be conditional on the building being completed on the first parcel, and further that if the option is to be exercised, that it be at the market price for the municipally owned lands at that time.
Thank you. And a seconder, Councillor Lauder. Discussion? Seeing none, you've heard the motion. All those in favor? Carries. And next on the agenda, we have the proposed purchase of 474 and 476 Dundas Street. Councillor Schattenberg.
The Woodstock City Council authorized the mayor and clerk to sign an agreement of purchase and sale with the owners of 474 and 476 at Dundas Street, that the necessary bylaws be read, and further that financing of these purchases be taken from the Hydro Reserve Fund, and further that the 2019 capital budget be amended accordingly.
Thank you. And a seconder, Councillor Lauder. Discussion? Seeing none, you've heard the motion. All those in favor? Carries. Unanimous. And next item, we have the short form wording of the municipal code. So this is for our smoke-free workplaces and public places. The states, of course, to make sure that we have all the fines and things ready in our bylaw for what we've approved recently. So Councillor Lauder.
I move by myself that Woodstock City Council refer the changes to Municipal Code Chapter 835, Smoke-Free Workplaces and Public Places to the bylaw section of the agenda, and further that City Council approves the proposed short-form wording and set fine submission as listed in Appendix B, and further that City Council authorize the City Clerk to make the necessary application to the Ministry of the Attorney General to seek approval for the proposed short-form wording and set fines changed associated with Municipal Code Chapter 835, Smoke-Free Workplaces and Public Places.
Seconder, Councillor Schattenberg. Discussion? Seeing none, you've heard the motion. All those in favor? Carries. Unanimous. And then our next one is the fire chief recruitment. Councillor Tate.
Make the motion that Woodstock City Council direct the CEO to manage the recruitment process with the best use of staff resources.
Thank you. And the seconder, Councillor Fraser. Discussion? Seeing none, you've heard the motion. All those in favor? Carries. Unanimous. And we have no notices of motion, so bylaws. And who would like to do the bylaws tonight? Councillor Schattenberg.
Yeah, thanks. Moved by Councillor Mark Schattenberg, seconded by Councillor Jerry Accioni, that the following bylaws be given first and a second reading. 9296-19, a bylaw to amend City of Woodstock Municipal Code, Chapter 643, taxis and limousines. 9297-19, a bylaw to repeal the City of Woodstock bylaw number 8725-11, a bylaw to exempt from taxation for municipal and school board purposes certain lands owned by the City of Woodstock on which municipal capital facilities are located, namely a soccer complex which is operated by the Woodstock Minor Soccer Club. 9219-19, a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw number 8626-10 as amended, ZN 8-18-21 Crescent Care. 9219-19, a bylaw to govern and regulate the finance to provide for the adoption of tax rates and to further provide the penalty and interest in default of these payments thereof for 2019. Bylaw number 9300-19, a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw number 8626-10 as amended, ZN 8-19-05 Dundas Street. 9301-19, a bylaw to repeal and replace the City of Woodstock Municipal Code Chapter 835, which was the smoke-free workplaces and public places. 9302-19, a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw number 8626-10 as amended, ZN 8-19-12, which was 300 Juliana Drive. 9303-19, a bylaw to amend traffic bylaw number 8021-04 as amended. 9304-19, a bylaw to provide for the purchase of certain lands owned by Dornock Farms Limited in the City of Woodstock. The City of Woodstock in the cellar in brackets. 9305-19, a bylaw to provide for the purchase of certain lands owned by 2518292 Ontario Limited in the city of Woodstock. 9306-19, a bylaw to provide for the purchase of certain lands owned by 2137599 Ontario Limited in the city of Woodstock.
Thank you. You've heard the motion. Discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Carries. Unanimous. Councillor Schattenberg.
That the following bylaws be given a third and final reading. So it's 9296-19, inclusive through to 9306-19. And it was moved by myself and seconded by Jerry Accioni, City Councillor.
Thank you. You've heard the motion. All those in favor? Carries. And tonight, we will start at the top of the alphabet. Councillor Accioni.
Thank you, Your Worship. Again, let me just start off by saying thank you to everybody that the neighborhood that was in attendance, not only tonight, but at the other public meetings. There was a full house. A lot of people were really respectful, and as councillors, I know I can say I really love seeing the public out here for those kind of meetings. So thank you. Huge congratulations to United Way and all the organizers. $65,000 raised on what I hope to be the first annual Boys for Big Toys. Great evening, good time with a lot of friends and acquaintances here in the city. So that was a great event. Hope everybody has a great Victoria Day weekend. Don't forget the Midway is at Southside Park, and we'll see you along the parade route starting 10 a.m. Monday morning. Be safe and have fun, everybody.
Thank you. Councillor Lauder.
Thank you. I'm not going to participate in the parade. I'm going to do the judging this time. So that's going to be a little different for me, but I'll get to see the whole thing. So I'm looking forward to that. The Dairy Capital Run is Sunday, May the 26th. There's still spaces if you want to sign up, but we're really short on volunteers to help. So if anyone can spare 2 or 3 hours on the 26th, early in the morning, the hospital would really appreciate that. And you can call Jocelyn Jenner or Rebecca Farrell, or just give me a call, and I can give you the phone numbers to get in contact with either one of those ladies. And I have a pamphlet here that was given to me, and it's the Victoria Quilts Canada. And these ladies make quilts and give them to people, families that have a loved one suffering from cancer. And I know my daughter received one, and it's really wonderful to be able to get this. And they have at least 300 now. So if there's anyone that would like to request one of these, just give me a call and I can have you contact someone right here in Woodstock. The ladies out at Sally Creek, I understand, make quilts there during the winter, and it's a great thing. And also, I just want to remind you on the 29th of May, there's the Youth Quake and Beat the Ripple Effect. Created by youth, so at the art gallery, it's from 5 to 7, so get out and support our youth and see what they're doing in the art world. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Talbot.
Thank you. Just want to, as Councillor Accioni already said, and Councillor Lauder, about the 24th of May weekend. It's hopefully Mother Nature will cooperate as well too. It was nice to see the Midway coming into Southside Park. It's always an exciting time, especially for all the school kids that get to walk by and see it going up. So I'm hoping that between the Midway and the parade, it will be very successful. And on another note, Jerry Schmidt, our official card maker around the community, just want to say thanks for remembering me once again.
Thank you. Councillor Fraser.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I suppose on behalf of the BIA, today was the first day of the downtown Woodstock Farm Market at Museum Square. I wasn't able to make it, but at least the weather was suitable for an outdoor market today. And again, on behalf of the BIA, coming up very soon is event of Saturday, May 25th of Bark in the Park, which will include some sidewalk sales by some of the local merchants. So Bark in the Park is going to take place at Museum Square. So the aspect is bring your puppies down and enjoy the atmosphere and the food and the hot dogs and a few other things. And I hope everybody has a great long weekend.
Well, thank you, and even though you weren't able to be there at the kickoff for the downtown market, all of the people that were in attendance were very pleased when I let them know that council had approved the weather to be perfect for them. So they were all very happy with your decision. Councillor Schadenberg.
Not sure if there's a camera on me or anything like that as we're being streamed, but of course the Woodstock Recreation and Leisure guy has been out for quite a while for the spring and summer. A lot of the summer camps are taking registrations, of course, and it's very simple to do it now, online registration. Woodstock Museum, for example, Karen's going to have a tough time to keeping her job after the junior curator camp goes on the first weekend of August. She may lose her position after that. There'll be about 20 kids that'll want her job. But Cats versus Dogs, King of the Jungle, Dino Camp. Every week there's a different theme week at Museum Camp or any of the camps for the city of Woodstock. So between Brian Connors and Patrick King and Karen and even Carrie Gill, and on the list goes on for the people that are organizing the summer camps for the youth of the city of Woodstock, that it's terrific. And I also want to give a big thumbs up to the Lions Club of Woodstock as we talk about the parade one more time. People might not realize this, but the city of Woodstock, of course, runs the Victoria Day Parade, and the BIA runs the Santa Claus Parade when that rolls around in the fall time. Well, people might not realize the Lions Club of Woodstock, which I've been a member of for a number of years, as says Councillor Jerry Accioni, do the numbering on the oval of the racetrack to make sure all the floats get in order, stop the traffic on Nellis Street, and try to do the marshalling as far as that goes to get the sort of the parade out on the Mackenzie Street and then eventually down to Dundas Street. So the Lions Club deserves a lot of credit for that as far as being committee members, doing a lot of the grunt work, so to speak, for the parades. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Tate. And what I'd say, I think everyone's done a very good job tonight covering everything that's going on. For anyone who's watching us stream, make sure that you stay up to date, city website for the announcements, and of course, we are continuing our consultation process for downtown revitalization and doing a refresh of all of the programs and grants and everything else that council has focused over the years on our downtown. So the website is letstalkwoodstock.com, and there are more public consultation sessions coming up. And with that, I would ask for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Fraser, seconded by Councillor Tate. You've heard the motion. All those in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you.